Welcome to Reporter's Notebook, where we talk to the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the stories breaking on their beats. I'm Jim Antle. I'm joined today by energy and environment reporter Jeremy Beaman. Jeremy, we've written in the Daily on Energy newsletter that President Biden's climate agenda was on the ballot in the midterms. Midterms went certainly at least a lot better than expected for Democrats. Does that mean this was a big win for the Biden climate agenda?
Biden's reading it that way. As his post-midterms press conference, he said, look, us doing better than expected means voters want us to keep doing what we've been doing, which is sort of being aggressive and passing legislation to build more green energy resources and things like that. I think certainly all kinds of people are reading into the election, different reasons that the Democrats did better than expected. But had they been shellacked, I think certainly Republicans would have said, look, this was a referendum on Biden, and especially his energy policies. Gasoline prices were or have been a determining factor for the White House all year, determining their schedule and Biden's public appearances and what he's going to say at various times. And Republicans can't really confidently say that necessarily because of how things turned out, I think.
And he's already basically said that whatever Republicans come in, if there is a House majority and that and so forth, that he's not going to tolerate any rollback of his climate agenda.
Right, and that's not surprising, really. And Republicans can't do what they probably would want to do in terms of repealing items that they don't like without Biden. And Biden's not going to be able to do a lot more aggressive things with Republicans, so it might be another sort of stalemate Congress. I don't know. There might be room for agreement, which we wrote about too, which is on this permitting reform stuff, which kind of picked up steam before the midterms and then died down again. But there's an appetite, from on the Republican and the Democratic side for permitting reform. Biden said himself, permitting is too onerous. Republicans completely agree with that. Now, the big divergence is sort of how far Republicans want to go much further than the Democrats. The Republican permitting reform proposal that Shelley Moore Capito put forward is basically codify all these Trump regulations, these Trump reforms to NEPA and these other laws, which Biden, one of the first things he did was to vacate those rules or to order them to order agencies to rewrite them because they thought the Trump rules sort of flouted, good environmental stewardship. So there will have to be some negotiations. All I have to say, there will have to be negotiations, but both sides see a need for permitting reform, and maybe that's something they can agree to.
Sure, some bipartisanship a little bit. So obviously there's a whole host of issues at play in the midterm elections, and so anytime you're on the winning side or in this case, maybe the not so losing side, you can say, well, go down the list, we won on all these things. But there were some down ballot races where climate certainly was a factor. I mean, we've talked about Josh Shapiro in Pennsylvania. Talking a little bit about maybe races or just examples of issues where people were talking about this kind of on the stump.
I think Pennsylvania is kind of one of the best examples to look at where a moderating, if you could use that word, a moderated rather, position on energy and climate change won Democrats. Two statewide races. In Pennsylvania, Shapiro and Fetterman both have won there. And both of them pitched themselves as allies of the natural gas industry, which is huge in Pennsylvania. And natural gas is such a big subject right now because on the one hand it's a cleaner source than coal, so the gas industry is promoting it for that reason to sort of retire coal and get this fueling power plants. But also with the whole Europe energy crisis question, Biden has promised to help Europe get more natural gas, to help them sort of deal with the crisis, get off Russian supplies and so forth. And so it's an area where a Democrat in Pennsylvania could sort of stand in the middle and say, we're for climate change mitigation, we're for the green transition. We also are for this energy source that can really save Europe during this winter and next winter and winters forward, and support our workers too. Support pretty sizable industry there, like I said. So look to PA for a message that I think worked, sort of moderate energy message that worked. It was kind of a perfect situation for that kind of thing.
Because some of those candidates maybe, because Biden got himself into a little bit of trouble about how he talked about the transition to green energy, and maybe sounding like he was going to do it a lot faster and in a more economically disruptive way than a lot of people would like. And then when you talk to some of the down ballot candidates, I think with John Fetterman in particular, Republicans were hoping for sort of the fracking shellacking, and it didn't really happen.
Yeah. To be honest, Biden has talked differently to different crowds all year long, and that's me trying to be charitable. I mean, he's not been totally consistent on some of these issues, saying that has restricted drilling where he hasn't, and it may just be a sort of misunderstanding kind of thing. But there has been this fundamental tension. Had there not been this issue with energy prices, gasoline prices all year, all the momentum, the sort of rulemaking momentum, the legislative momentum, beyond the issues they had with getting Manchin's vote, they would have been more aggressive.
Sure.
They wanted to spend more, and Biden would not have been talking about encouraging more oil and gas production had gasoline prices not doubled or whatever. And so he's really kind of had to adjust to the moment and find a way to meld the messages together. And what he sort of concluded is we need oil and gas in the short and medium term,
right.
But we're still pursuing the transition. Excuse me. And I think you can make that case, in an intellectually honest way. It's
right.
just the industry wants the longer term prospects,
Sure.
and Biden is not sort of prepared to give them that yet, I guess.
Well, it also gets a little bit difficult if you're going to do your messaging based on who's heckling you in that moment. So if you have somebody saying, "Hey, you don't let us drill," and he says, "Yes, I do," or you have somebody saying, "Hey, you let people drill too much. You're not good enough for the environment." "No, I don't let that happen.
Right.
We're green."
Yeah, and again, both of those statements came out of Biden's mouth
right.
within 4 days. So he's trying to respond to both. To sort of both really major concerns that are affecting people.
And competing priorities. And so Biden is going to take this show on the road. He's going to a major international climate conference.
Going on tour.
He's going on his big green tour, big green bus abroad. So does he go into this? There was a lot of criticism of him last year, talking to all these polluters and emitters and trying to extract concessions from them. Does he go into this conference with a little bit more credibility or clout?
You would think so. Last year, when they went to the COP26, it's called in Glasgow, Biden's agenda was the reconciliation bill. The Build Back Better was kind of on the ropes.
Sure.
Manchin had already written that op-ed in the Wall Street Journal that said, "I can't vote for this thing."
Right.
Pelosi joined Biden and was sort of. She gave remarks and was like saying, "Look, we're trying to do this climate bill that was kind of floundering at the time.
Right.
Now they've done it. It's smaller,
Sure.
but they can say, look."
But it had a significant climate component to it.
Absolutely, absolutely, and so I think he definitely has some more clout for that crowd, which are people who are very hawkish on climate change in general, world leaders, activists, and others, folks at the UN. And so he can point to this bill and say we're doing our thing, but it's not sort of a completely easy message, because the Europeans and some of our allies in Asia, South Korea and Japan, are frustrated with certain items in this bill, especially
Sure.
the electric vehicle provision, and because the bill is sort of a protectionist bill. Biden is all about Buy America, Buy American.
Right.
He always says, when I see climate change, I see jobs,
right.
and that means American jobs. And so they built that into the bill, and Manchin pulled them even further in that direction in many ways. And that's made a lot of our allies angry, because it will disadvantage their products. And so he's
Sure.
also having to balance that as he goes to the conference.
So sort of the economic competitive aspects of it, even if maybe on some of the environmental policy goals, purely speaking, they're kind of on the same page.
Yeah, they want to, the Biden administration, the Europeans, they want to get to net zero, but they don't necessarily approve of the sort of turn Biden has taken and how to get there with some of these items.
So Biden may have the wind at his back, but not the carbon dioxide part of it.
You could say that.
Right. Thank you, Jeremy. You can read Jeremy and subscribe to our Daily on Energy newsletter at washingtonexaminer.com.